Travis Patnod. How I'm doing the sharpening to bring out the detail in the fur. So this is my first attempt at doing a video. Not going to tell you this is maybe my fourth take of trying to do this video, but my first video. So it's been interesting trying to put this in and get it recorded. So hopefully this will be the final take and we can go from there. So I've recently posted a couple images that people were commenting about the detail that they were seeing in the image and was asking how I was able to accomplish that. And I just kind of want to go through some of the process that I'm doing to be able to bring that detail out. And it is a little bit of a lengthy process, but what I found is it has worked very well. And it is something I've been working on for quite a while, and recently I finally got it to where it is kind of perfected it at this time and been happy to use it and now happy to be able to share it with you guys. So the detail process is usually about in the middle of my editing process. So right now the image on the screen is already gone through doing the cleanup with any cloning, removing blemishes, things like that, and also editing the image so its exposure, highlights, contrast, things like that have already been done. So at this point is when I start working on the detail. So basically what I start off with is I have a master image. So we're going to use the background and then I hit Control J to make a duplicate of that. What I'll do is, so I save this one as my master for sharpening. I'll change the name of this to sharpen. And once I have that, this is the one I'm going to be using for the multiple layers of sharpening. So I just keep using this one and duplicate it multiple times. So this is the process I go through of part one of three for the sharpening. So using the sharpening layer, I hit Control J again to make a copy. I'll go up to the blending mode and I'm going to go to linear light. And what you see is the image on the screen is this is what will be affected when we do the sharpening for this first layer. So basically I build up the sharpening through multiple layers and using multiple blending modes to help layer this all in. So with the first sharpening layer we do, go to linear light, I'll go to filter, other, and high pass. And what I'll do is I usually start out around zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.8. And what I'm looking at in the image is watching how much of a change there is. So this one I want to probably look at about zero point 0.8. And what we'll see, turn the layer off and on, you'll see at the edge of the whiskers uh, the detail popping out on there. And what we're able to do is with the opacity is just kind of control it a little bit more, fine tune it. So you just want very light sharpening to it. So it's just barely noticeable. Okay, first layer is done. We're going to highlight the master sharpening layer again. Hit Control J, slide that one up to the top. Go to the blending modes again, and this time we're going to vivid light. As you see, the light, we're adding a little more of the dog to the sharpening process. So with vivid light, we're going to go to filter, other, high pass, and usually we'll kind of start at about double what the last one was. So around 1.6. I may bring this down to about 1.2, 1.2, and see the effect of that. So that's got a pretty big effect. So we're going to go into opacity, bring that down. Let's bring it a little bit more. So right about there. And once again, we're going to go to the sharpen, duplicate that layer, drag it to the top, go to blending. This time we're going to hard light. Then we're going to filter, other, high pass again. So we're at 1.4, so we're going to probably look at about maybe 2.5 figuring. So once again, that has a very big effect on the whole image. So we're going to drop the opacity down on this. So that looks good. We're going to go to sharpen again, duplicate, drag it to the top, blending layer, and we did highlight. So we're skipping up to overlay this time. And you guessed it, we're going to filter, other, high pass. So we're at 2.5, so going to probably be looking about 4.5 for this one. And as you can see, that has a big effect on the whole image. So we're going to bring that opacity down again. So 50, maybe just a touch bit more. So 52 looks to be good. And once again, I'm going to go to sharpen, Control J to copy, drag to the top. And this time we're going to soft light. And you guessed it, filter, high pass. And this time we'll probably go to about 7.5 in that area. 7.6 sounds good. And once again, we're going to adjust the opacity. Let's say maybe 40. It's a little harder to see what's happening. So that looks good there. So what I do after this is I take the top layer and down to the master sharpening one, using the shift key to highlight all of those and add them into a group. This way, one, we can control all of them. So this is what we started out with, and that's where we're at now. And what we're able to do is also fine tune it as the group. So this one looks pretty good, about, pop it up to about 80. That looks good. Now, the other thing that I do with this, because what happens, since we're sharpening the entire image, you're also adding a lot of noise to the background. So I use a layer mask to just highlight the dog and remove the sharpening from the background. The one thing I do in part of my post-processing when I start out is I do make a layer mask of the dog, and then I make a path out of that so it's always available. So this way, when I need it, I just got to click on it, add the layer mask, and it's already masked. So this saves me a lot of time because I will be using the mask quite often through this process. So I can show you doing this in another video, so that could be on another list if you guys want to learn the easy way of doing that. But right now, since we have the layer mask on, we're blocking the sharpening, we're masking out the sharpening on the background, and it's only hitting the dog right now. So once we have this done, I'm going to merge all the layers into a new layer above this using the Function Shift Option Command E. Always got to think about that one. It's a long command to try to remember. So we have the new layer with all the sharpening blended in. Now we're going to go to File, Stylize, and go to Oil Paint. And my settings for this is brush at 10, cleanliness at 10, scale at 0.1, bristle detail 0. I do turn on the lighting and set that so it's pointing down, because in the studio, that's how I set my lights up. That is above the dog pointing down, so I kind of want the detail of the oil painting to show that same type of lighting. And I used oil painting to help take the grunginess out of the sharpening. And you'll see how this kind of works here in a second, but it helps add a little more detail, a little more, uh, show the fur a little bit better, but also remove the grunginess of the detail of the sharpening. So with this, now we have the oil painting set in. I'm going to create a layer mask. And all I have to do now is highlight this layer mask, hold Option, drag it up, and now it is masking the oil painting from the background also. So I highlight this mask, and what I'm going to do is there's certain areas I'm going to remove the oil painting from. So the obvious areas that you expect to be very sharp and detailed, such as the eyes and the nose. So with the brush, I'm going to hit X. So I'm using a black brush. Make sure my opacity is at 100% and go ahead and remove the oil paint from the eyes and a little bit just below the eye to get that, and a little bit in the corner. And same with this eye. And of course the nose. And what I'm going to do is to clean up the nose. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So we've masked out the eyes and the nose. And now when I change the opacity on this, a couple things I'm going to be looking for when I do this. One is obviously looking for any obvious lines that show, they make it look like it is painted. There'll still always be some, but I try to minimize that. And also along these whiskers, you see these little extra lines that are in there from the brush effect. So you kind of see how that follows, even though the whisker's there, you get a couple extra ones. So I try to look for that, and what I'll do afterwards, after I set the opacity, is do a little cleanup on that. So I'm going to probably start about 65%. I still see a little bit hair on the nose, which is expected. And I look around the whiskers, so you see a little bit right there, some there, so it's not too bad. There's, as you do this more often, you'll kind of know the areas where to look for it. A lot of it is like right along the top of the head hair, and also where you definitely see it is back in this area where the dog has gone out of the depth of field and now kind of blurs out. So the oil painting tries to add detail to it. So this is another spot you will see it. So this is common, what I'll end up cleaning up. But the other thing I want to look at is to make sure, looking at the painting, the picture itself, that it doesn't look overly painted. So I may drop this down a little bit more, maybe to 55, just to see. So you can see the effect there. That's with the oil painting off. You kind of how harsh the sharpening looks. As soon as you turn it on, it kind of smooths it out. So and makes it look soft at least. So I'm going to probably go with 55% on this. And what I'll do is with a black brush, change my opacity to say 20% for this. Open this up, and what I'm going to do is look for these areas where we're seeing those swirls, and just do a quick brush over on this. And this is going to help bring out those, remove some of the painting look. And as you go through this, do this more often, you'll know exactly kind of where to look for these things. I'm just cleaning more of this off. It still leaves some of the oil painting to it, but it just removes those swirl marks from the brush and that oil paint. And usually you see it in some of these odd whiskers here. So I may just clean the ends of these off a little bit. And on top of the nose. So that's what we're looking at now. And what I also will do is I remove the oil paint from the eyes fully. So what I do is at 20 to 30%, I will add the oil paint back in. Because what happens, I find, is the eye still looks a little grungy. So adding just that little bit of paint smooths it out nicely, but doesn't overdo it with the painted look. So this adds a little more smoothness to it, softness to it. So right now that's where we're at. And let's see the difference from this. We have one more step to go for this yet. So with the oil painting, we're removing that. So you see the difference oil from the sharpening, the oil paint. So that really softens up the detail from sharpening. So our next step is we're going to merge all the layers again, hitting the Function Shift Option Command E. And with this, we're going to do another contrast adjustment, micro contrast adjustment in Camera Raw to help give the oil paint a little more detail. So we're going to go to Filter, Camera Raw, grab the brush, and we're going to Texture, and I'm going to use 60 on this. I'm going to be a little heavy-handed on it because once we save this, I can go to opacity and adjust it to where I need it to be. So usually I will start out on the eyes, make sure my flow's all the way up, feathers nice. Just going to go through these areas. And what you'll see is along the top, I don't know if you can see it in the video or not, but you see some light clipping from the highlights. And what you can do with that is while you have that brush, just take the highlights and bring those down a little bit. I'm going to probably bring it down to -10. You'll still see some of the clipping, but it helps control it a little better. We'll go through the inside of the ears, a little bit on the eyes, and just to make sure I've gotten everything, turn the mask option on because I missed the entire forehead. And that little eyeball. And for areas like along the neck here, that just so we could get a little detail in these whiskers or the, as I call them, wings for her, I will create another layer. So I'm going to hit the plus and drop this down to maybe 30%. Obviously, since it is further back from the main focus point, it's not going to be as sharp. So I don't want it to be as strong as the other side. But I just want to catch those real quick. Now I do try to avoid sharpening or using texture down here, just for the fact that uh, sharpness is another way it's going to draw people's attention. They're always going to focus on the sharpest part of the picture. So I avoid sharpening that area. I just want the face around the eyes and kind of lead up into that area. So we have that, and make sure. So I just did my second uh, texture on 30 on these little areas on the outside. And I'm going to hit OK on this. Bring us back into Photoshop. And what we can see the difference between the oil paint and this. So turning off the texture and turn it back on. off, and on. So this adds that slight little micro contrast to the image to help bring the distance or the fur out just that little bit more. And what I could do with this is I could once again adjust opacity to where I want it. So probably about 85 maybe. And what's kind of fun with this, it's where you start playing with the blending layers. So let's say I want to hit only the highlight areas. So basically what I'm going to look at, I'm going to hit lighter color, and it's only going to add that effect to the brighter parts of the image. So if I want to bring more of this detail to the brighter parts, I change my blending mode to lighter color. If I want it to affect the darker parts of the image, I change it to darker color. So it depends on what you want to focus on, but there's different ways to be able to do this and kind of control how it's hitting the image. And then put it on normal, so it does cover everything for this image. I believe 85 is what I was looking at. That's on. Oh, sorry, opacity is 0. No wonder why there's no change. Let's try this again. 85, 87. So it's on, that's off, on, and off. So what we started out as, sorry for zooming back and forth so much, that's the image we started with. So what we did is we added sharpening to the image by, let's knock these off so you can see each layer of this. So the first layer is sharpening, second, third, so that's what the sharpening was doing. Then we added oil paint to it, which helps smooth out the sharpening. So it softened it up. Then we added texture, which once again brought out that detail. So it kept it a nice soft look to it, but still brought out that extra detail. Now, the one thing kind of wanted to point out with this is it's great to be able to get the detail of the image, but if the image does not have detail to begin with, then you're not going to be able to pull it out. Now, a prime example is right here on the bridge of the nose. Usually they have, since the nose is slightly out of focus and they have very thin fur right at the nose, I can't make it look like there's actually fur there. You see a little bit of the difference, but it's not where you would actually say, yes, that's, you know, very detailed fur. So you can't make those things happen without actually painting it in or getting a picture that does have detail and Frankensteining the image. So basically, what Photoshop does and what I'm doing with these images, I'm bring into the pixel level. So Photoshop technically can only do 4 things with an image, with each pixel, basically. So for every pixel, it could only change the hue, saturation, luminosity. Or you could clone a pixel from, take this pixel and move it there. But in a sense, once again, it's only changing the hue, saturation, and luminosity of that pixel. So what is happening is when we're doing the sharpening, is we're adding contrast to each pixel and the pixel next to it to make it look sharper. So this is the image from the very beginning that we started out with. That is after. So do you see the contrast that we have between the pixels? That is what's actually creating the detail. So keep that in mind that with the pixels and how you're able to control that and what you're able to do with those and how you're able to bring the fur out is simply through the contrast adjustments using sharpening, uh, oil paint, and then texture for this image. And that's how we're able to get her. Uh, Hopefully this will be the last final take. I don't have to do this again, but I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. If you have any questions, comments, please let me know. And I hope this helped you. Thank you.